Hello, and welcome to another episode of DEIB Small Talk. I am your host, Florence Idowu, and this is brought to you by Bavarde Consulting and Management. Today we have a topic called DEI in legal, and we want to look into the Latino voices in the legal space. I have with me today Noela Serna. But before I bring her on board, just a quick biography about her. Let's meet Noela. Noeli Serna is the founding attorney of Serna Legal Services, a corporate law firm that operates and offers Illinois Latino-owned businesses and Latino entrepreneur corporate legal services in English and Spanish. Noel's firm incorporates businesses, drafts, reviews, and negotiates contracts and advise clients on their businesses' ongoing legal obligations as they scale and grow. Before starting our own law firm, Noelle worked as an in house corporate counsel at an international company where she counseled the business on a large variety of corporate matters, such as commercial contract and everyday legal questions. Prior to working as an in house counsel, Noelle also practiced transactional banking law in Chicago offices of two international law firms. Also worked in our family's restaurant. Oh, that's a fun fact. Since the age of 5, which contributed to our interest in business and appreciation for excellent customer service. Our formative years in the family business eventually led her to the practice of corporate law, and she has positioned herself well to represent and advocate for Latino business owners. Thank you very much, Sir Noeli Sena. Yeah, I'm not gonna forget. I'm gonna pronounce it right. I know I did. Noeli Sena. Thank you
Yes.
very much for having. Yeah, for coming up today.
Oh,
How
happy
are
to be
you?
here, Florence. Thank you.
Happy to meet you too. I know we've been having some transactions and conversations, but it's really nice to have you on the show today to talk about one, the legal space, BEI, and of course also to talk about you being a Latino, your struggles, your challenges, and of course your success. So I'm very much excited about today. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling well. Really excited to have this conversation too. I think this topic is so important, and I hope others will benefit from it today as well. Yeah.
Definitely. So to our listeners out there, if you are listening, I would also encourage you to tell us where you're listening from, where you're joining us from, because this has been streamed to various platforms, YouTube, LinkedIn, of course, Facebook, and I did do Instagram today. Imagine.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's been streamed across various platforms. So wherever you are, please do introduce yourself. Tell us where you're joining us from, and if you have questions, please feel free to ask your questions. So let's get started. So tell us about you, like you now in your own words. Tell us about you.
Yeah, happy to. So, like you mentioned, Florence, my name is Noeli Serna. I am the proud daughter of Mexican immigrants. I was born and raised in the Chicagoland area. So, just as you mentioned in that intro, and thank you for reading that for us too. Uh, when I was 5, I think one of the most formative moments in my life is that my parents opened a fast food restaurant in the Chicagoland area. So I
Mm,
grew up in that family business. I was very fortunate that we worked together as a family.
mhm.
So we were integral. My brother and I were always there with my parents. We grew up in that space, and really, I think it's come full circle now to where I am as the owner of my own business, my own law firm. But as you mentioned, between 5 years old on the family restaurant and then now as a law firm owner, there were a few steps along the way. Attended Northwestern University for both undergrad and then for law school as well. Worked at two law firms in the city of Chicago, went in house for a couple of years, and then as of a year ago, made this decision to start my own corporate practice as well. and happy to talk more about that as well, and the decision making behind it. But I think one really important piece to note, that I think is relevant for today's topic, is that I'm first generation, so first in my family to go to college, law school, and now become an attorney as I am today. So a lot of learning, a lot of steps, mistakes, seeking a lot of help along the way to get where we are today. But in
First minute, that was a bold step. It's a bold step because you just shared now that she being a first gen to go to college, to even study law, which is a very huge one, because I've heard stories about so many people how they really want to. Let me tell you the secret. I wanted to study law, but I didn't.
you can still do it.
Oh, I doubt that. So, which is why I know how difficult it could also be, to go to law school and so much story. But there was something that you really said. I think I'm going to highlight that in your biography, and that when towards that end about how you working with your parent contributed to your own success in starting a business. You said that in the last paragraph. And I think I want us to highlight that aspect because I think it's very important. Because that really brings me to the question is why did you choose law? Why did you choose to study law? Why?
Oh, it's such a good question. So I actually am pretty lucky that I can pinpoint that moment, right, when I decided that for myself. And it actually was when I was young, when I was in middle school working at the restaurant, because my first association with a lawyer was the lawyer that helped my parents incorporate their business. So there was an attorney that came in, helped them create a legal entity once my parents understood and were ready to take that step for themselves. So in my mind, as this, 7, 8, I don't know, 9-year-old kid looking at what my dad was doing, who he was talking to, I associated lawyer with helping the family business. So I remember that very clearly, and I started saying, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be a lawyer one day, without, of course, really knowing what all that meant, what kind of laws that I could practice, etc. But that was really the first introduction, I think, what spurred that interest, and I stuck to it over time.
Yeah, that brings me to second questions that just like we have on the screen is did your identity as a Latino does it influence your decision to become an hunter?
Yeah, that's such a good question. In terms of how my own Latina identity influences that decision, I think another big piece of it too is that, especially in the immigrant Latin community, you will often see that community working with attorneys in the immigration sector. So I had a lot of family that was working with immigration attorneys. It was a topic that's very prevalent in the community for obvious reasons. So I would say that while the encounter at the family restaurant with a corporate attorney was what inspired me, right, to want to pursue that for myself, I did have other influences around me that demonstrated how the law and becoming an attorney, especially in our community, was so influential and so important as well.
Hmm. So, what are some of the unique challenges that you have faced as a Latino Anthony now, or that you also think or believe that all the Latinos have also faced in their journey to becoming a lawyer or an attorney?
Yeah. So I would say at this point, especially, one of the biggest challenges tends to be underrepresentation of Latin individuals in the legal profession. So I know specifically, I'm part of an organization called the Latina Commission as part of the Hispanic National Bar Association. And through that, we've done research and have come up with a figure showing that Latinas specifically, they make up under 2% of all attorneys in the United States. Even the Latinas in the US are about 7% of the population. So it's such a low, low number. And I think that in part comes from the lack of examples, mentors, models that are also Latin, who we as up and coming students, and ultimately as lawyers can can rely on, can speak to on a personal level. So, the fact that there are such low numbers of Latino attorneys in the highest levels of the legal and corporate world, whether that be law firm partners, CEOs, other corporate leaders, it makes it difficult sometimes to find the right advocates and mentors that can help coach a student or coach a young lawyer on how it is that they can climb that corporate ladder as well.
I'm very sure that this is not just special to the Latinos, it's almost to every immigrant and minority in the state. So,
Yes.
what, in your own thoughts now, and what you've been doing being a business owner, what are you doing to address those challenges?
Yeah. So I think for me, one of the most important pieces is being able to create that pipeline between myself and other students, other young Latino attorneys, in order to help create those mentorship opportunities, especially at a younger age. Because really, the sooner we can introduce and I'm speaking specifically for the Latin community, but our Latin students, the kids, right, to what it is to be a lawyer, what's the path to achieve that, what are your options once you arrive at that place, I think is one of the best ways to help support the community early on. So trying my best to, if there's a student that hears about me, someone connects them with me, I'm always really excited and happy to have conversations with them, to mentor, maintain those relationships over time, because I think that they are critical. And I was fortunate to have some great mentors in my own past and in my own life that helped me get to where I am today as well.
Talking about communities, one of the things, based on my interactions with some Latinos, and I think I had a show sometimes. I had a Latino business owner she's a filmmaker, an award-winning filmmaker, and one of the things she talked about is community.
Hmm.
It, it's just a special DNA, if that's identity of the Latinos. You really adore and ensure communities, the coming together, the communal system. So now, what are the specific way? Because sometimes I was on a conference sometimes ago. I was speaking with this Latinos, and one of the things she also talked about is community, community. So
Hmm.
now, how can you now as a Latino Anthony and other Latinos Anthony out there, how can they create that community to make sure that they are promoting and helping these younger lawyers or students, law students, in promoting social justice and equality in the society?
Yeah, so I 100% agree with that. The Latin community, we do believe very much in that power of community. And there's also a really big, I think, reliance on trust, right? So for us, if you develop a relationship built on trust with someone, you honestly can make a huge difference for that demographic. And I say that because the Latin community, and I would say especially the immigrant, predominantly Spanish speaking community, it absolutely does not receive the same legal help, access to attorneys, and even other professionals as maybe other demographic groups do in the US. And a huge part of that is because, well, one, there's sometimes a language barrier, and two, there is also sometimes that lack of trust in the community to the others, to the unknown, right? So when it comes to promoting social justice, equality, I think that all lawyers, but especially Latine lawyers, were uniquely positioned to be able to provide greater access to legal services to the general Latine community. And we do that especially by building that trust, being truly honest and concerted in our efforts and interests in helping the community. So I think that's a huge part of it, is developing that trust, which in turn leads to more open communication with others that may need our services as well.
Yeah, now let's go to the DEI aspect, because one of the things that we want to look into is diversity, equity, and inclusion in the legal space. And I'm very much curious to know what initiatives that organizations, legal firms, now legal organizations are actually putting in display, or what are they doing in the legal space in terms of DEI. So, what would be your own take now? What are the initiatives? What are the programs that legal organizations are doing? To make sure that they promote the DEI.
Yeah. So a couple of thoughts there. So the first thing that I'll say is that organizations, they have to be intentional about wanting to recruit Latine or other minority talent. So if you say as an organization that you'd like to recruit, for example, more Latine or minority attorneys, then you do have to make sure you have that buy-in, right? From whether it's the recruiting teams at these organizations, upper level management, ultimately those people that are making hiring decisions. And I've seen it as I've worked at law firms and different corporations. Obviously, so much work to do there, but I have seen situations where these companies are participating in programs, different initiatives, especially where they're connecting with colleges, with law schools. They're creating mentorship opportunities and pipelines between minority students and those companies. So, what I've seen when that happens is that those efforts ultimately benefit both the students and those companies because now you have students that can ultimately make more educated decisions about where they want to work, what it takes to actually get there and succeed. And then alternatively, the companies also can start to develop those relationships with students early on, and can start to attract those communities to their companies. So really, it's true, and it's not just saying it, but you have to actually act on it and put certain programs in place to support those DEI efforts as well.
Have you ever been in a situation whereby you applied for a job, you really want this job, you know you're qualified, but you felt that you were denied or rejected based on your identity?
I, you know, yes and no, right? I think there have certainly been jobs where I've applied, felt I was qualified, was rejected. It's hard to know, right, who else was part of that, the pool of applicants, et cetera. But I think that thought is always somehow intrinsically in the back of my own mind, right? There's that imposter syndrome that exists. It's real. It's something that you have to work through, and I still continue to work through it myself. But at the end of the day, I think what being a Latina has taught me especially is that I I'm here to work as hard as possible so that I have no regrets necessarily, right? Looking back on what I've done and the steps that I've taken in my own career. But yeah, absolutely. I think that that little voice in the back of your head sometimes likes to tell you otherwise. But all I can do is do my best, and hopefully, and luckily, right, I've gotten into too many of the places that I have wanted for my own career, with the help of others as well.
I know you're now a business owner, so you're no longer at the mercy of the recruiters. But somehow we still find, even though as a business owner, we still find ourselves, when we start going to client acquisition, for instance, you want to work with this person or you want to submit a proposal to an organizations, and you probably will get rejected. Sometimes I like, why didn't they want to work with me? Why? Have you ever been in that situation, even as a business owner?
Oh, absolutely. I think now my mindset has to shift a little bit from not just practicing law, but also running a business. So, as a business owner, I have positioned myself in such a way where about 85% of my clients at my law firm are Latin owned businesses, Latin entrepreneurs. And I very publicly, very vocally put that message out there into the community, into my social media presence, etc., because those are the clients that I do want to attract and I'm excited to work with. And that's the case because I speak Spanish and I think that I have the right background in order to help that community. Um, but it's hard. Sometimes people aren't ready to make that investment in an attorney. And it's hard sometimes not to take it personally, right? Where you have those conversations, you try to sell your services, but maybe it's just not the right time, not the right fit. But really, my job and what I am here to do is that even if I may not be working with that business owner, with that corporation, I do want at least that person to walk away feeling like they gained something valuable from a conversation with me. So for me, it's not always about that bottom line and having to, get every client that potentially comes through the door. I think it's just creating that sense of there is accessibility to an attorney that someone can actually communicate with and trust at a more personal level. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to shift from just being a lawyer to being a business owner as well.
Yeah, the mindset is quite different.
Yes.
Quite quite different. Okay, now as a business owner, we've talked about the DEI from recruitment aspect now. What is your own organization now doing in terms of DEI to make sure that your recruiting practices are equitable and inclusive? What is your organization doing?
Yeah, so my organization right now, it's only about a year old, so it's
Oh,
young. But I definitely do make a concerted effort for the couple of people that I have brought on, have been some Latino, some not, right? But for me, because it is important to portray myself publicly to market to the Latine community, I do really try to make sure that we have individuals that speak Spanish, for example, that are coming through the door, and helping me in my own marketing efforts, for example. So I think for me, it's really important that what is portrayed publicly from my own law firm is a reflection of the clients that I would like to come in as well. And I think in the future, as we continue to grow, as hopefully we bring on more attorneys in the future, I think I will be especially well positioned to tap into those mentees, other individuals that I've spoken to. And I think it's like I said, you have to be invested in actually taking the steps to recruit the attorneys that you want working for you. So we'll absolutely make an effort to recruit within the Latine
I like the fact that you're
community.
making an effort. I like the fact that you're making an effort to recruit for your own group because you want it to be reflective of the clients. That's but how are you making that equitable? Because now it's looking like to me you're moving towards just one side. Being a Latin service in the Latin, you only want to employ like Latins and maybe some couple of others, but you should also take it into consideration that what you should be trying to build is an inclusive and equitable space,
Mhm.
an inclusive environment. And you have to be very much intentional. Even though you are working with the Latinos or the Latin communities, you should also be able to be, you should be inclusive and reflect not just the diversity of your own clients, but the diversity of your society.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that because, yes, while the majority of my clients tend to be the Latin business community, it's not all of them. And it's certainly, we're here to help any business owner that needs our services, right? We're invested in the business community at large. So I completely agree, Florence, that it's about opening the doors for others, for any community, right? And the fact that we do serve more of the Latin community, the part there that we want to make sure and focus on, I think more than anything, is the accessibility to Spanish speaking attorneys as well. But
I like to ask you this question. What does diversity mean to you?
oof, what a good question. So I think diversity to me is open mindedness, accessibility. It's overcoming those implicit biases I think that we all have within us. I know that's such a broad like way to describe it, but diversity isn't just about race, ethnicity, etc. It's diversity of thought, diversity of beliefs, and being open minded to understanding different perspectives in this world. So I think that is what creates more social justice and more equity among all of us as human beings as well.
Okay. I just want to say this to the audience, to the listening, that if you do have questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat box as I am going through. A comment just came in, helping you in defining diversity, DEI, and I'm going to highlight that. It says that DEI goes beyond black and white or male and female. It is important that we all feel represented and celebrated as for our differences as much as our common values. And that's very important to us because there's just this important phrase, not even a phrase, a sentence. It is important that we all feel represented and celebrated as our differences as much as our common value. I want to say thank you to I can't catch the name unfortunately, but I want to say thank you to who just oh, it's Ponas. Thank you very much for that comment. So back to Hose and now to the legal space. I want to know what initiatives now you as a business owner and even the organizations that you've worked with in the past. What are the DEI, I'm going to use the word intentional now, initiatives that you do or are involved in as a legal organization?
Yeah, so in terms of initiatives, I think a big part, at least for me in my personal and professional life, is staying involved in different, we call them bar associations. So I myself am part of the Hispanic National Bar Association. I think I mentioned this earlier, and I'm part of a committee called the Latino Commission, which our goal is to promote and retain, promote, and support Latinas interested in becoming part of the Latin legal community specifically. So for me, it's really important to maintain that sense of community with other Latina attorneys. I'm learning about what others are doing in the space, developing relationships. And I do hope that that continues as a reflection of my practices, my recruitment moving forward as part of my own business. And similarly, there are other bar associations in the state of Illinois where I practice specifically. So just trying to keep involved in those different organizations, support them how I can, and in turn, that's directly supporting students and others that are coming up the ranks as well as part of the community.
I like the fact that you're coming from the younger expert, trying to support the younger generations and mentor them and train them to become Latino lawyers and attorneys or whatever they want to become in the future. But at the same time, I just want to, because this could be a blind spot, is even though you are serving the Latinx community, and just like the comment that we just read now, you have to also be able to look further. What is your strategic plan in the next 5 years? What are you trying to achieve? What is going to be your employer brand? Do you want your employer brand to just be Latinos only, or you want to be very much inclusive? Because this is exactly where biases and marginalization comes in. Just want
Yeah.
to point this to you. And you have to be very intentional, even though yes, I want to serve the Latinx community. I want to um, be seen as a Latino employee. You have to be intentional. Do you want to do it 100% or do you want to be inclusive? Just a food for thought. Okay, so and that comes to my last question today, which is what advice would you give to young people now, particularly those from the Latin communities that are considering a career in law?
Yeah. I think my biggest piece of advice is to be an active participant yourself in looking for those opportunities for mentorship. So I would say don't wait, right, for the mentors to come to you necessarily, but don't be afraid to take that initiative for yourself. Reach out to other attorneys, students, if you know anyone in the community that may know an attorney and that's something that you're interested in learning more about. Reach out and actually be active in that process, in that journey for yourself. I would say that most people tend to be excited to talk about themselves and their journeys. So if someone were to come to me and ask a question or ask for, some of my time to discuss my path with them, I'm always happy to have that conversation and help someone learn something new and support them however I can. So just be intentional with your own questions and finding the answers to them as well.
Okay, one more question for you. If you could change anything in the world, what would you change?
Anything in the world. Oh my goodness. Um, I mean, if we could just completely dispel racism and all the just bigotry, and I speak specifically in the United States, that yeah, if I could change anything, that would be something incredible to change, people's misconceptions and perceptions on racism and such. I think that would be our world would be much better off for it. Yeah.
I cannot disagree because that's so true. If we could change anything, I would also want to take away racism, biases, marginalizations, underrepresentation, touch different names for the same thing. And just to make sure that the world is a better place where everyone is acceptable, accepted, celebrated, well represented. It's a huge task, and I'm glad that you are giving that voice to the Latin community. I'm
Thank
really
you.
acknowledge that. I give you accolade for that, and to all those also listening out there, is the little way you can make change, the little way you can impact change. Make sure you are impacting changes. That's is just my word for you. So now I do have a fun fact. Now let's get to a fun fact about you.
Fun fact about me. I'm not that fun, but I would say most people don't know this. I really love the NBA, so I love professional basketball here in the States. One of my goals is to visit every NBA arena here in the US. I think I'm at 11 so far, and there are 29.
Wow.
I have some more to go, but I love basketball, so
That's a great one out there. Oh, I wouldn't have thought that. Like, you
that's
know, and basketball.
yeah.
No, 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 no. That is. Thank you very much. I want to say thank you very much for coming down today. I really wish this was physical because I'm saying coming down.
Yeah, it feels that way with the virtual
It
setting now, yeah.
does feel that way. Thank you very much, Denise. I actually really loved you.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very much, Denise. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nelly, for today. It's been great to have you. It's been great to learn about your journey, and also amazing to learn that you have been in the family business since five.
Yeah,
I want to say that is probably one of the reasons why you can push the struggles to make sure that you're successful, because having a business, especially in the United States, it's a huge one. Trust me.
yeah,
It's a And you coming from the Latin communities again, trust me, there's a lot of challenges. I really wish we had a session to talk about that, but because I just wanted to talk about the DEI, what is the legal organizations are doing the DEI space, so we can learn more and see ways in which we can make sure that we are well represented and preach what DEI actually means, because a lot of people are beginning to get it wrong. I was reading a statistic this morning. Yeah, I think this should be where I can. I was reading a statistic this morning about the chief diversity of business statistics by race, and 76% whites, and we
really.
are yeah, really, like really. I can read the statistics to us. We have 76.1% white, we have 7.8 Hispanic or Latino, 7.7% Asian, and 3.9 to be unknown, and 3.8 to be Black or African American, and 0.7% for American Indians and Alaska Native. We can see that DEI is, should I use the word declining? Because there is no representation. What we are fighting for, we just have to keep fighting. We have to keep representing, using our voices wherever, whenever we can, to make sure that we are well represented. So I want to say thank you very much for coming down, for coming today. Thank
Oh,
you very much.
thank you, and thank you for the work you do, Florence. This is so important, so thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, and that comes the end of today's show on the EIB Small Talk. I am Florence. Thank you for all those who have joined us so far, to our audiences from YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and of course Instagram. I'm still a little bit curious, like what's going on Instagram. I'll check that later. Thank you all for joining me today. I remain Florence Idowu, and this is the DEIB Small Talk. Thank you.